I want you to picture a scene. It's a scene we've all, driven past. You're on a highway and you see a massive infrastructure project.
A power plant, a dam.
Exactly. A huge new airport terminal. And it's just chaos. You see dust, cranes, hundreds of workers. And when we look at that, our brain, it naturally focuses on the builders, the contractor.
Right, they're the ones physically wrestling with the earth. It's the visible part of the iceberg.
But there's this ghost in the machine, a player who often escapes scrutiny, at least until the checks stop clearing, the client, the owner, or in FEIC terms, the employer.
Mm-hmm.
We just assume their role is simple: sign the contract, wire the money, and show up for the ribbon cutting. But today, we are flipping that assumption completely on its head.
We are indeed. Because if you assume the employer is just a passive, money bags, you are missing half the game.
That is our mission for this deep dive. We are cracking open the FIDC Silver Book, the 2017 edition. For anyone who doesn't know, this is basically the industry Bible for EPC and turnkey projects.
The standard.
And we are specifically auditing Clause 2, which is all about the employer's obligations. And what I found so fascinating is that while the Silver Book is famous for dumping risk on the contractor, Clause 2 puts the employer in a really tight procedural box.
That's a great way to put it. The Silver Book is designed for price certainty. The employer wants a fixed price, a fixed date. But the trade-off, which Clause 2 really codifies, is that they have to stay strictly within their lane.
If they step out of line.
If they step out of line on access, money, or their own people, that fixed price just evaporates.
Okay, so let's start with the most fundamental thing. Before I can build your billion-dollar refinery, I actually have to be able to get onto the land.
Subclause 2.1, right of access to the site.
It seems so basic.
You'd think so? You can't build if you can't get in? But you would be amazed how many disputes start right here, on day one. The text is explicit. The employer shall give the contractor right of access to and possession of all parts of the site.
Okay, I want to drill down on that word possession. Does that mean the contractor can, lock the gates and treat it like their own private fortress?
That's a common misconception. The clause has this really important nuance. The right of possession may not be exclusive to the contractor.
So I have possession, but I might have roommates.
You will almost certainly have roommates. On a mega project, you're rarely alone. The employer has their own teams doing inspections, utility companies, other contractors working next door.
Wow.
So possession here means operational control to do the work, not, exclusive territorial sovereignty.
Which sounds like a logistical nightmare. You're trying to move heavy machinery, and the gas company is digging a trench right across your only access road.
It creates friction. But the real commercial bite of this clause isn't about who is there. It's about when. The contract data, the specific appendix for the project, will have a hard date. Access must be granted by January 1st.
Okay, let's play that out. It's January 1st, my bulldozers are idling, the crew's on the clock, burning cash, and the employer calls and says, look, we're having some trouble with the local government. Give us another week.
In the world of SEI, that is a catastrophic mistake by the employer. The remedy is pre-programmed. If they fail to give access on time, the contractor gets two things. First, an extension of time.
Which is only fair. I can't finish on time if I couldn't start on time.
But the second remedy is the one that really hurts the employer's wallet. The contractor is entitled to payment of cost plus profit.
Wait, plus profit. I want to pause on that because that feels huge. Usually, if there's a delay that isn't anyone's fault, like bad weather, you might get your costs covered, you break even.
That's the standard neutral delay.
But you don't make a profit on sitting around.
This is different. This is a breach of a primary obligation. By adding plus profit, the contract is basically treating that downtime as billable work. The contractor is generating margin while their machines are parked. It's a penalty, really.
So the meter is running at full commercial rates while the gates are locked. That's a massive financial gun to the employer's head.
It is. But the drafters of the Silver Book are clever. They gave the employer a shield, a way to legally keep those gates locked.
I figured there had to be a catch.
The performance security. The clause says the employer may withhold the right of access until they have received the performance security.
Ah, the performance bond. The bank guarantee that protects the employer if the contractor goes bust.
Exactly. So if you're the contractor and you're screaming about access delays and demanding your cost plus profit, you haven't actually sent the bond yet.
The employer could just stand at the gate with their arms crossed and say, no bond, no entry.
And they are completely within their rights. It creates a standoff. And there's one more own goal bit. If the delay is caused by the contractor's own mistake, like late paperwork,
Then you get nothing. No time, no money.
exactly. You can't trip yourself up and then sue the other guy. He keeps the discipline tight on both sides.
Okay, so we've navigated that. The bond is paid, the gates are open. Now we run into the next big wall, bureaucracy.
The silent killer of schedules.
It really is. Permits, zoning, customs clearance. Now, under a turnkey contract like the Silver Book, the contractor is the expert, right? The employer's attitude is usually, here are the keys, call me when it's done.
Broadly, that's the philosophy. The contractor owns the process. But subclause 2.2, assistance, puts a check on that. It acknowledges that the contractor, especially an international one, is at a disadvantage.
They're the outsider.
Right. If you're a German contractor in Vietnam, the employer is the local. They know the officials, they speak the language.
So the employer can't just wash their hands of it.
They have a duty to cooperate. The text says, if requested, and the contractor has to actively ask, the employer has to provide reasonable assistance.
Ah, reasonable assistance. One of those lovely, vague legal terms. What does that actually look like?
The book gives examples, providing copies of local laws that aren't easy to find, and crucially, assisting with permits, licenses, or approvals.
So like customs clearance. If I have $1 million turbine stuck at the port, the employer can't just say, not my problem.
They can't do the paperwork for you, but they have to facilitate. They're like a local fixer. They don't carry the luggage, but they open the doors. If they refuse, that's a breach.
It stops them from weaponizing bureaucracy. Okay, moving from paperwork to people. We said the site isn't exclusive. The employer's own people are walking around.
Subclause 2.3 covers employer's personnel.
I can just imagine the tension. The
Yeah.
contractor's running a tight ship safety protocols, PPE zones, and then the client's reps wander in wearing loafers, ignoring the signs because, they own the place.
It happens, the owner mentality.
Yeah.
But on a hazardous site, that's a massive liability.
Yeah.
The Silver Book is direct about this. The employer is responsible for making sure their people cooperate and, crucially,
What's the second part?
they must comply with the exact same health, safety, and environmental rules as the contractor.
So the boss isn't above the law. If hard hats are mandatory, the guy signing the checks wears a hard hat.
No exceptions. But there's this little provision tucked away in 2.3 that I find fascinating because it just flips the whole power dynamic.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. The removal of personnel.
Yes. We're used to the client having the power to kick people off site. I don't like that foreman. Get rid of him.
Standard stuff.
But this clause gives that power to the contractor.
The contractor can fire the client's staff.
They can require the employer to remove a person. Now, they can't do it just because they don't like them.
There has to be a good reason. What's the threshold?
Misconduct, incompetence, negligence on safety. But the big one, the one with real teeth, is corrupt, fraudulent, collusive, or coercive practice.
Wow. So if the employer's project manager is, say, hinting at a bribe,
Or trying to rig a subcontract for his cousin's company.
the contractor can actually cite this clause and demand his removal.
It's an incredibly powerful anti-corruption tool. It forces the employer to police their own house.
That's a huge shield. It turns the site into this neutral ground where conduct is what matters, not who pays whom.
Which brings us neatly to the one thing that matters most.
The money.
The money.
The lifeblood of the project, right?
Yeah.
We spend months vetting the contractor. Can they afford to build this? But do we ever ask if the employer can afford to buy it?
In the Silver Book, yes. Subclause 2.4 is employers' financial arrangements.
This feels almost rude. It's like asking your boss to show you his bank balance.
It's not rude, it's survival.
Uh-huh.
The core obligation is that the employer has to detail their financial arrangements in the contract data right from the start. We're funding this via a loan from Bank X, that kind of thing.
Okay, transparency up front. But these projects take years. Economies crash. A financing plan from 2024 might be worthless in 2026.
That's the risk. So the Silver Book gives the contractor the right to request updated proof of funds. But, and this is critical, they can't just ask because they're feeling nervous.
You need a reason. You can't just audit the boss for fun.
You need a trigger.
Yeah.
The contract lists specific triggers that unlock this right.
Let's run through them. This sounds like a strategic roadmap for a contractor who's worried about getting paid.
The first trigger is a major variation, a change that costs more than 10% of the original contract price.
So, actually, add another wing to the hospital. If you want 10% more work, I need to know you have 10% more money. Makes sense.
Exactly. The second trigger is cumulative. When all the little changes, the scope creep, add up to 30% of the original price.
Death by 1,000 change orders. Happens all the time.
The third trigger is the most alarming one: failure to pay. If the employer misses an invoice,
That's the red alert. You missed a payment, prove to me you aren't broke.
you can immediately demand evidence. And finally, if the contractor becomes aware of a material change in the employer's financial situation.
Like reading in the news that their parent company just filed for bankruptcy.
Precisely. That gives you the legal right to ask. And once you pull that trigger, the employer is on a shot clock. They have 28 days
4 weeks to show the money.
to provide reasonable evidence that the funding is still in place.
And if they don't?
Well, we're not covering Clause 16 today, but if they fail, the contractor can suspend work or even terminate the contract. It's a massive safety net.
It prevents the contractor from being dragged down with a sinking ship.
It levels the playing field.
So there's total transparency when it comes to money. However, and I feel a plot twist coming, that transparency does not apply to the dirt under your feet.
You've just hit on subclause 2.5, site data. This is where the Silver Book really earns its tough reputation.
Okay, set the scene. The employer owns the land. They've probably done feasibility studies. They have borehole data, seismic reports.
They know it's down there, and the clause says they must share it. They have to make all that data on subsurface, hydrological, and environmental conditions available.
So far, so good. Here's the map. Here's the soil report. Where's the trap?
The trap is in the disclaimer. The clause explicitly states, the employer shall have no responsibility for the accuracy, sufficiency, or completeness of such data.
That is breathtaking. Here is all the data we have. It might be completely wrong. Good luck.
It's worse than that. It's, here is the data, and if you rely on it and it's wrong, the cost of fixing the problem is entirely on you.
So if their report says solid granite and my drill hits a swamp,
Under the Silver Book, that swamp is your problem. The contractor is deemed to have inspected the site and verified it all themselves.
but come on, how can a contractor realistically verify deep subsurface conditions in a short tender period? You can't re-drill the whole site in 3 weeks.
You can't. It's impossible. And that is why the price of a Silver Book contract is higher. The contractor is pricing in the risk that the data is garbage. They are selling the employer an insurance policy against bad ground.
Okay, that clarifies the commercial logic. The employer is paying a premium to transfer that unknown risk to the contractor.
That's the deal. The employer wants to sleep at night knowing the price is fixed, even if they find a cavern under the turbine hole. They pay the contractor to take that sleepless night instead.
But it forces the contractor to treat all the employer's data with extreme skepticism.
They should read those reports with the attitude of, interesting if true. Now, there is a slight exception for data that can't be verified, but generally, 2.5 is a total disclaimer of liability.
It's a brilliant move. They comply with the duty to disclose, but strip the disclosure of any legal warranty.
There's one last little clause, 2.6, employer supply materials. It's pretty simple.
If the employer lends the contractor a crane or provides the steel.
Yes. The rule is simple. You break it, you bought it. The contractor is responsible for it while it's in their control.
Just standard custody rules. Makes sense.
Pretty straightforward risk transfer.
So let's step back. We've audited the employer. We've looked at the Silver Book, not as a manual for building, but as a manual for how a client has to behave. What's the verdict?
The verdict is that
But they have successfully built a fortress around the biggest physical risk, the site itself. They share the data, but keep none of the responsibility.
that is the grand bargain of the Silver Book.
So why does this matter to our listener? They might not be negotiating $1 billion dam tomorrow.
It matters because it shows the mechanics of power in high-stakes deals. We think having the money being the client means you can do whatever you want. This shows that power comes with procedural handcuffs.
The employer has the billions, but if they miss an access date by 24 hours or fail to produce a bank statement in 28 days, the balance of power shifts instantly.
It's all about accountability. The contract doesn't just bind the worker, it binds the boss.
I want to leave everyone with a thought to mull over, specifically on that site data disclaimer. We said the employer has to share data, but takes no responsibility for it.
Correct.
Does that create a kind of perverse incentive? If I'm the employer and I know I'm not liable for the data's accuracy, am I incentivized to do the bare minimum of investigation myself?
That is the paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
If I give you a highly detailed but wrong report, we argue about whether I misled you. If I give you barely anything, you, the contractor, are forced to do all your own detective work.
Which you have to do anyway under this contract.
Exactly.
So does the shield of no responsibility actually discourage transparency, or does it just force the contractor to be a much better detective?
It's a question that keeps a lot of lawyers and risk managers up at night.
Something to think about the next time you see a disclaimer in fine print. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the FIDIC Silver Book.
My pleasure.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.